Hey there, Oily App. Welcome to episode, I believe, 129 of the Oily App podcast. Typically, you're used to hearing either the voice of Ernie Yarbrough or maybe Hannah Stevens, but tonight you get me. This is Chase Harrison, and I'm part of the Oily App team, and I have got my lovely wife, Amber, here with me tonight. If you caught last week's podcast, we are starting a series on back to school. And it was myself, Amber, and Ernie last week. We had a great talk on fear and getting back to school and how that can affect kids and things like that and getting back in the swing of things. But today we are going to kind of steer into episode number 2, and we're going to title it Focusing. Hey, Amber.
Hi, Chase.
She asked me if she could mute this or if I needed to cut something out to knock me out, then she could do that. But we'll just leave it live because it's more fun that way. So, all right. So we're talking about focusing. Both Amber and I have homeschooled our children for the last 4 years. And
we're starting year 5 now.
We're starting year 5 of homeschool.
Which this year we're actually doing a hybrid school. So our kids will go to school half of the week and we will homeschool them the other half of the week.
Right. So a big thing that kids in general not really struggle with, but it's just part of being a kid, is focusing on the task at hand, whether that be school or chores or things that we're asking them to do. So Amber, what would be, I'd like Amber to kind of go over what we do with our kids as far as trying to help them focus when they're coming, they're going back and forth between now they're starting a new school, doing things like that. They have activities that they do during the day. And so we just kind of want to offer some advice on how, we work with our kids and how to help them focus and keep their mind really on the task at hand.
So of course I have a list of Young Living tools that we use that I'll get to in just a minute. But first of all, I think the most important things are having accurate expectations and not expecting too much from them based on their age. A lot of times if they're homeschooling and can't focus, they might need to take a brain break or they might need to get out the wiggles or something like that. Also to make sure they have eaten and that they are not hungry and to make sure that they're not thirsty. So, I've heard some advice that I'd heard before was to, if they are cranky or not focusing or whatever, make sure that everyone, yourself included, have been fed and watered. So make sure that everybody has had food, everybody has had some water, and those are very important. Make sure they had enough sleep. Those are all like basic things that we do to help focus. Do you want to talk about some Young Living tools that we use?
Well, yeah, but so I think we all forget that we were once kids, and I'm 38 years old and still can't focus on everything as much as I need to. And so I do think, God graces us with a lot of patience and mercy when we have kids, and we learn a lot about ourselves in that time. And so Young Living, we use it for everything. And it's not only a part of our life for our health and wellness, but things like this, things you don't think of right off the top of right off the bat. So yes. So what do we normally use? This is kind of a genuine question for me because I kind of know what we use, but this is a good thing for me to learn of what we actually use on our kids, and you can just kind of help all of us. So. Okay.
Well, one thing that I'm really big on is my kids having options and choosing what they think will help for them. So especially like our oldest is 13. He has been, homeschooling since he started 4th grade, and we have like some oils that we have that he chooses from when he needs help focusing, are Motivation, Genius, Clarity.
Genius is part of the KidSense line.
Yeah,
right?
the KidSense Genius, Brain Power. It's like the kids' version of Brain Power. And so he will often, I'll be like, hey, do you need one of these oils? And he'll pick which one because I love that kids, they're intuitive and they know what works for them. And so I'll be like, which one do you want to use? And he knows which oil he needs that will help him focus. Another big oil with him, another big product with him is Nitro. We think of nitro often as energy, but it's also a cognitive supplement, and it's so good for the brain, and it really helps him focus on stuff. And so nitro, like when he goes to school tomorrow, I'll have a nitro in his bag for him in the event that he needs to have some extra help with focusing. So those are some oils that we use. Those he mainly uses topically, obviously besides the nitro. And we also will diffuse peppermint and rosemary. Those are great oils to diffuse, especially like if your kids, like for homeschool, but if they go to school, you can diffuse them when they're studying, and it just helps them to retain information and to focus and all of that. Sometimes we'll diffuse the motivation or genius or something like that, but I really like to diffuse like peppermint and rosemary and things like that.
And he's our 13-year-old, and 13-year-old boys' emotions are all over the place, and so I think that kind of, a lot of times his focus, if he doesn't have a grasp on his focus, we always talk about how our outward emotions are part of something else going on, and so it's kind of a whole, regimen for him, and he's gotten very, very good at that as far as what he knows and what he likes to use for himself, and that not only just help us focus, but help his overall just well-being in particular. So our middle child, who is
10,
right after me, she's
our creative genius, much like her daddy.
Yeah, she wants to.
And I just usually just put oils on her. If she's not focusing, she doesn't want to focus on what oil she wants either. And so I usually will use Genius, or depending on what she's needing. If she's just like, I'm not getting this, and then I'll use Genius. If she's kind of like, I don't want to do this, then I'll use Motivation to get her to want to do it. Or sometimes I just use like Grounding is a really good emotional oil, and sometimes kids get really emotional when they're doing if they don't want to do their schoolwork, or if they're overwhelmed, and if they're emotional then they can't focus. So Grounding is a really good oil for her, and I'll just put that on her. And I know sometimes we assume that everybody knows where to put the oils. Where I put the oils for things like that are on the brainstem, behind the ears, and on the wrists. So sometimes we forget that not everybody knows exactly how people use them. So that's how I use it on them. And Grounding usually calms her, and then she can focus. So a lot of it is trial and error on what works for your child, because we have 3 different children who are very different, all 3 of them, and different oils work for different ones. Our youngest is 6, and Kid Power, she's obsessed with Kid Power. She loves Kid Power, thinks it is the greatest oil on the planet. So when she's not wanting to focus, I put Kid Power on her, and then she thinks she can do anything.
So again, our main topic here is back to school. This is our episode 2, which is we're concentrating mostly on focus. So this is a good series that we're going to have. So if you haven't listened to our first podcast from last week on this series, please do that. Then, you've already listened to this one. So then stay tuned for our next one. But kind of wrapping all this up for this particular one here, thinking of all of it encompass, what are the key points that you would kind of remind us for like focus with their kids? Because all kids are individual. We went over kind of what we do for ours, but the main key points.
Making sure they're fed, making sure they're watered, making sure you are fed and watered, and just having adequate expectations of what they should be doing.
Yeah, and talk to your other friends in Young Living and see what they use for their kids. Like I said, like we know what works for us. We know what Young Living offers. There's a lot of good stuff, and hopefully you got a lot of good information off of this podcast. But let us know, and then go into our Facebook page and comment on our posts. We do posts daily on our social media, so let us know what you're using. Heck, we may be on there tomorrow talking about this whole thing, because we are wanting to focus the month of August, and it will roll over into September on just a kind of a whole back to school series, because these months are just really they're really important times for lots of people, whether you go to a school or whether you homeschool. They're really good stuff. So that is it for this podcast. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you for having me.
All right, check out our next podcast. And also remember, if you're an Oily App Plus member, we do have a new Dr. Jim Bob course releasing tonight as well. So for that, we'll catch you next time.